So, welcome back to the Hot Lap, and we're looking at both the McLaren and the Mercedes F1 launch, starting off with the McLaren, which, as we know, were the first ones to launch their interestingly black and yellow livery. But I think on the new car, which you can see right here, it actually looks quite nice. Yes, there's a lot of chrome there. It does look shiny. There's the Google Chrome, and there is very much the patterns of the carbon fibre. So McLaren launched their MCL38 this morning, and it's already hit the track, as you know, by the time I'm talking about it. Obviously, we don't know how good it is, but Zach Brown's come out and saying it's awesome to be able to launch our 24 competitor, the MCL38 at Silverstone today. It's great to see our new car in its 24 livery on track and see all the hard work and dedication. And he said the fantastic thing about this sport is how competitive it is, and therefore we must remain realistic, as every team will have made progress in the off-season. The true test of whether we've made steps in the right direction will be qualifying in Bahrain. Damn straight it will be, and we're all excited to go racing again. Mr. Stella has come out, Andrea Stella, and said the team are excited to present the MCL38 today and see it on track for the first time. He said before we hit the track for competitive sessions, we've got a lot of work to do, including putting the MCL38 through its paces at that Bahrain test, citing that the team have done a good job over the winter and they're confident that they can hit the ground running. But we know we have important tasks at hand before the season starts. There are a number of innovations on the car, but not all areas we want to address have been completed, and that's something Lando Norris has said as well in an interview on Sky. But as always, he's said the right thing. He's excited to get behind the car. Over the past few weeks, I've been back at the MTC, that's the McLaren Technology Centre, putting a lot of work in on the simulator with my engineering team. And also, Oscar Piastri, everyone's excited, aren't they? He said, we won't know where we stand in terms of competitiveness, though, until we go racing in Bahrain. But we've been preparing as best as we possibly can by spending time in the simulator, working closely with everyone who's designed, built, and will run the car. So, but something quite interesting here, which I'm going to share with you, is on the races. You can see here what McLaren's hiding in its new car, which I thought was an interesting article to share with you guys. McLaren's F1 car has been finally revealed a month after its livery. It says secrecy is nothing new, especially in launch season, and McLaren is not alone in holding stuff back. So let's just see if we can zoom in there. In holding stuff back. And it says what we've seen on the MCL38 is not an unfaithful recreation, but it's understood to largely reflect what ran at a Silverstone shakedown on Wednesday. But McLaren's been particularly careful not, and this is the interesting thing here, not to reveal some sensitive areas of the car. So it says basic tactics at play, like limiting the number of images available, being very specific with the angles to disguise certain areas, and fitting what looks like basic wings and a simple floor. He says whatever's on the floor edge on the image the McLaren released, for example, seems to have been brushed out from a couple of specific angles. And what is clearly very different, a very different side pot inlet approach, which would mark a departure from this McLaren trend. Stella, as it says here in the article, said sometimes you may want to just have this lower profile in launching your car and a variety of approaches. And it's worth pointing out that the car we have seen is, at least as Stella puts it, pretty accurate. So that's what we have here. I mean, that's again another rendition of the car. It does look lovely, somewhat similar to last year's car, but there are obviously going to be differences when you start pointing it out. I wouldn't be prepared for anything too shocking, though, Stella said, when asked by the race how the launch images compare to what was around at Silverstone. If that's the case, though, why, the race says, are they trying to hide stuff? So it's hiding some design ideas in the images that it controls. Then a few more days pass before people and rivals see them. And it says, because we can, was driver Lando Norris's slightly tongue-in-cheek answer for why McLaren is hiding stuff, because it's a game of performance, and why would you ever want to give away anything? He said, you'll see what the car looks like, but you'll see it in 2 weeks or something, so be patient. Oscar Piastri added, with a smiling reference to the RB20 Silverstone shakedown, two heads ahead of McLaren's launch. At least we showed our car before it went on track, unlike others. Yeah, Bit of a dig there, but there we go. So it's going to be interesting. How will McLaren do this year? I think a lot of people are expecting big things from them. I mean, if you remember, they had a really good 2021. Absolutely, they did. But then they really suffered in 2022, looking mildly average and were beaten by Alpine. But then in 2023, they started arguably one of the worst cars and ended it arguably again with, the second fastest car you can make an argument for. So we do expect big things from McLaren. They are they are one of the big teams. They're one of the biggest names in Formula One. So absolutely we expect big things. Why not? But there we go. That's the McLaren. I guess we're going to see come Bahrain, but no one knows until qualifying in Bahrain for the actual Grand Prix. But there we go. So next up, we've got Mercedes also launched their car today. Yes, they did. Lewis Hamilton's last Mercedes. It's the ninth and penultimate team to launch, with Red Bull coming tomorrow. That's the 15th of Feb. Now, following on from McLaren's early morning launch, this is from planetf1.com, Mercedes are the latest to show off their car with what they're going to race. And George Russell and Hamilton were on hand to introduce the car along with Toto Wolff. It's on their, on their YouTube page. And the W15 is going to be Hamilton's last. He's won 6 drivers' championships with Mercedes since joining the team at the end of 2012. That's the most successful driver pairing. But Mercedes are plumping for what they've called a revolutionary design and parting ways with the concept used for the 22 and 23 cars, kind of like the no pod design, but even when they went to the no side pods design, but even when they went to we need the side pods design, the whole crux of the car was still designed around those no pods, so they're quite limited with the budget, what they could do. So Mercedes' resurgence this year might yet result in a record-breaking 8th title for Hamilton. Imagine that. So with the team having identified a new technical direction, James Allison has returned. This is a James Allison car, and he's come out and said the design of any car is an iterative process and a long one at that, he said. It stretches back to last year. A new car enables the team to make big alterations that are not possible during the season. These are decisions that are taken during the preceding summer. Now, interesting, again, I want to share a relatively interesting article with you. And it's on it's essentially on motorsport.com. And as you can see here, one of the more fascinating of these was, as you'd be expected, hidden in the launch renders, but it's an interesting front wing. And it said images taken of the real car, the team conducting its filming day in Silverstone. The area in question is the uppermost front wing flap highlighted in the image below, in which 2 segments, red and blue arrows you'll see, both which require each other to pass the FIA's legality checks. I mean, it's a tiny bit, but what does it mean? It's a fantastic take on the wording of the regulations, but whether the design is robust enough to withstand scrutiny from the FIA or even complaints from other teams remain to be seen. We also cannot completely rule out a ruse aimed to distract the opposition from other areas of the car. So, whatever the outcome, it offers us a pretty clear indication, it says, of Mercedes being back to its best in coming up with an intriguing solutions to try and eke out more performance. That's as you can see, last year's front wing and this year's front wing as well. A lot of these front wings are slightly shorter. They don't go to the edge, right to the end of essentially the front wing. The nose does it. It's a bit before, which it finishes a bit before, allowing a gap. And a lot of people have suggested that's the aero gap, so the air can get underneath the car and work the aerodynamics better. The front wing concept in question, though, sees a very slender element used at the top of the wing in the non-movable inboard section. And they said this thin strip of material simply exists for legality purposes because the rules allow a maximum of 4 closed sections across the wingspan. In this instance, and it says further out, the outboard portion of the upper flap has what we would consider a conventional cord, but rather than the flap being run up the side of the inboard, the metal adjuster, as you would expect on a normal layout, Motorsport.com reports that the flap tapers to be raised to a raised point above. That's the blue arrow, similar to how the front wing elements were used in the previous regulations. So it's in this instance, the same might be applicable, albeit on a smaller scale. Essentially, though notably Mercedes have changed the layout of its main plane and nose. This is all nerdy stuff for 2024, with the nose shorter than its predecessors, as we've just spoken about. But everyone's talking about that front wing. Is that gonna be the go faster for Mercedes? Absolutely. I mean, who knows? Who knows? So, talking about Mercedes, budget captain James Allison, he's come out and said that the team has achieved the goals it set for the W15, which is the product of a new design philosophy. However, he has indicated that some aspects of the car's design may have not been radically changed due to limitations imposed on the team by the cost cap. He said bigger layout changes are not freed up by no longer having the hassle of racing. You make those big layout changes prior to the summer, Allison explained. So, when you talk about a layout change, you're generally talking about where the engine sits in the chassis, the geometry of the rear suspension you're going to have on the gearbox, and what changes you're going to make to the part that contains the driver. He said those are all three things that are hypothetically doable in the middle of the year, but come at such a huge opportunity cost that you would never contemplate it. But nevertheless, you need to commit to them in the preceding summer. The off-season is about proving to yourself on your internal rigs and simulators that those pieces are what you hope they might be, that it will deliver your hopes. So it says, although the team won't get their first impression of how successful they've been until the first schedule test, let's say, at Bahrain, Allison is confident about the direction they have taken. He concluded by saying, I feel we have delivered on all the things we wanted to do. Some aspects are unbounded, and therefore you can never be fully satisfied. He went on to say, saying, we will not know until the car essentially truly runs. And a final word from Hamilton. He's emotional and surreal. He said, it's very surreal to be here, given that I came in 2013, so 11 years with the team, starting my 12th. It's such a privilege to work with a group of people where you see the work they're doing over the winter. So Hamilton, obviously, quite emotional. Who's going to win between the two? Because it's all bets off now. I mean, whereas Hamilton may have been seen as the number one driver at Mercedes last year, not necessarily happening this year, is it? So it's going to be really interesting with Mercedes, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. I think most expect Hamilton to still maybe have the edge, particularly in the races, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, if you made it to the end, absolutely congratulations, especially if you made it past all the nerdy stuff. Subscribe if you can, that will be amazing, and we will speak to you soon. Thank you very much.